Hi, my name is Kiri Kavinga. I am the Vice President of Programs for LabBridge. It's a nonprofit run by the nonprofit management miners here. For one of our programs, we put together a scholarship competition for people to write a very broad topic on the connection between liberal arts and business. So we have two wonderful competitors for the scholarship competition. They're going to present, and then at the end, we're going to award them their scholarships. If you were here for the second event in this room, don't worry, that'll come right after. This won't take too long. It'll be about 15 minutes for both of them and then the awards. So first up to present is Orion Ruffengreen. He is a freshman and he's a biopsych major.
Hi, I'm here to present to you the idea of an idiosyncrasy being a very important thing to our universe. And hey.
It's not going.
Yes, there we go. Alright, so I guess it's afternoon at this point, but I have a few engaging queries before we actually get to the meat of the thing.
Click it again?
Yes, please. Right. So, when you were younger, how many times did you find yourself restricted from pursuing something that made you curious? Like, I don't know, a glowing hot stove, or an open window, or something of the sort. So show of hands. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay. Just like motion with your hand.
And how often were you allowed to explore the world around you without restraint? Like, you didn't have a crib or anything of the sort? None of you. Okay. And have you ever found yourself yearning with it, for another perspective to look at the world with? Anyone? Show of hands. You're at the right school for that. So, basically, that's kind of what we're looking for with liberal arts education, the idea that you can expand your horizons and not just look at things as an A to B thing, but an A to maybe skip over to C and take a little dive in D and maybe go to J for a while and come back to B. Thank you. So we have some definitions to go over before I start. Idiosyncrasy is an odd habit or a quirk, in case you're wondering. Liberal arts is a system of education involving not merely stuff like the sky is blue or the grass is green, but why that happens, and more so like the symbology behind it and various other things you can throw in there as well. Whereas a technical institute is a school that applies a more direct approach to learning. It's more of you're trying to get a job, and so you're focused on things that you need to get that job rather than the things that might be nice to know along the way. And globalization is the process of what's going on right now, where all of our cultures are kind of meshing together, so we're meeting more Koreans and Japanese people than we did in, say, the 1800s and stuff like that. And it's just a huge mashup and wonderful mixing of the world and the cultures. Okay, so you might hear it on the news today or in PR if you listen to it, but we're going through an expanding world. And what that means, it's basically globalization is happening, it's a real thing. And you're not just going to meet Americans in America anymore. You're going to meet Koreans who are here for working for Kia or Samsung or something. You're going to meet the French who are here to sell baguettes. That was really insensitive, I guess. But, and as such, as we meet each other and we learn about each other in our multiple cultures, we need to understand how their cultures affect how they think, rather than just, oh, so you're French, so you like baguettes. No, the French and April Fool's to them is not just April Fool's Day, it's a symbolism of when April Fool came from the term where you have people who didn't know that they changed the calendar year, they'd extended it, pulled it back to January 1st, and that was the new year, and so on and so forth. And that's an interesting fact to know, and you can apply it and meet new people and get to know how they think, rather than just April Fool's Day. It's just a day, right? Okay, so culture is often kind of bypassed, I think mostly by Western civilizations that, or American, in my experience at least, where we don't quite look at why people do things and how their culture affects them. So for example, the average middle schooler in high school, I guess, doesn't really fully understand why the Koreans might dislike the Japanese for invading their land and trying to take over and stuff like that. Or the origin of the phrase, the Ukraine, which is actually, you call it Ukraine. The country itself is Ukraine, but calling it the Ukraine refers to, other countries having control over the land. Or why the wounds caused by the Holocaust and the Civil Rights Movement when they occurred, why those wounds are still fresh today. And perhaps they're related to genocide in Rwanda and Bosnia and maybe Syria too, but you wouldn't really look at that in a technical institute setting. You look at it more in a liberal arts setting. So if you knew those answers before I completely gave them away, you'll probably handle Bosnians and Syrians and the people who lived during the 60s and part of the civil rights movement. You'll understand them a bit better. And by seeking out the philosophies of others, we show that we care about them as people rather than stock or numbers or anything of the sort. Business interests. And that usually causes people to think, hey, you know, you're a nice guy, you actually care about my culture, or you know something about the fact that there are multiple systems of writing in Japanese, and it's pretty interesting. And you know, you have less revolution and lynch mobs as a result, because you don't have people feeling suppressed or oppressed or anything like that. So the question was, how does liberal arts education help with business, or how are they related? And I posit that since technical, comparing it to technical school education, a technical institute would focus you again more on, you want to become an engineer, so you need to learn mechanics, you need to learn algebra, how to use AutoCAD, stuff like that. Whereas with liberal arts education, you're learning more, okay, so you apply physics in this manner, so maybe if we applied it in a different, using kind of extrapolation, you could create a rocket that goes to the moon or something, or make little robots that bring you stuff like those little old-fashioned robot trays from like 2001 or something. And yeah. Okay, so more comparison on liberal arts and technical institutes. Liberal arts schools typically are less demanding of maintaining a single course of training, so you don't have to go from A to B to C. You can say, I want to kind of skip over B, but I'll go back to it and apply it to D and so on. Whereas technical institutes are more strict with their guidelines, at least those that I've looked at. With liberal arts, it may take longer to earn credits and to graduate, because technical institutes are usually 2 years, right? But liberal arts are like 4 years. And the extra 2 years that you'll get with liberal arts education, you can learn more about how the world functions rather than just how an engine functions. And graduates experience increased opportunities for growth or more chances for growth in your career rather than in a technical institute. Because you know, you can have a mechanic who's specialized in the brakes or a little part of your engine, but they have to keep taking classes and taking more classes and get certified further and further, whereas with liberal arts education, you kind of have a more well-rounded understanding of how things work. And with liberal arts, there's more multi-dimensional thinking, so it's not, as I keep using the example, it's not A to B to C to D, it's widespread A to 1 to Q to pi, and etc. And with technical institutes, it's more linear. You focus on getting your job so that you can thrive in that job. And I don't want to say that technical institutes are worse, because they're not. I mean, they have their value. You need mechanics. If everyone went into liberal arts education, you wouldn't have people who fix your cars at like your Mazda station, right? But liberal arts education gives you a greater chance to not only explore what you want to learn in terms of academic things, but about yourself. You have more exchange opportunities, like going to other countries and taking back what you've learned. So yeah, there's more space for exploration with the liberal arts education. And lastly, an idiosyncratic liberal arts education may take longer to complete, but it's worth it, because you don't learn just about what you're studying, you learn about everything, and you can apply it. And you know, you might have a business deal with, say, a person from Samsung, and if you started making jokes about how Japan was better or something like that, and you might upset them, you might not realize it, but you know, that could make you lose a deal. So with liberal arts, you can have better bonds with everyone. Thank you.
Then which one is yours? Done? How do I move on this space first?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's okay. So, sorry.
mind introducing her. This is Tony Jennings. She is a sophomore and she is a business major, econ minor.
All right, everybody, I'm extremely excited to be here, and I want to extend a thank you to the LASS program, which was started by the Oglethorpe University Nonprofit Management Minors. So big hand clap for them for starting this organization. And also the Oglethorpe University Business Department and faculty and staff that are working there because they work very hard for us. Today I'm going to be talking about liberal arts and business and how they connect to each other. Okay, so everyone who enters business wants to know, what is the magic formula to business success? How do I become Bill Gates, Ted Turner, a CEO, a CFO? Everyone wants to know the skills, the traits, who they need to network with, and all of that. So I'm here to show you that liberal arts education can lead you to everything you need to be successful in business. A liberal arts degree, in my opinion, is the best because it creates a well-rounded person. If you need to network, you get those networking skills here in liberal arts because you're required to go different places, talk to different people, work in diverse crowds, volunteer, go to museums. So once you learn how to seek knowledge out for yourself, you can find anything, basically. This collage right here was created by the Seattle University Liberal Arts Department. And what they did was they went around and they surveyed people and they asked them, when you hear liberal arts or think of liberal arts, what's the very first thing that pops into your mind? And the larger the word, the more people said it. So when people think of liberal arts, they think of ability, they think of knowledge, they think of conversation, they think of value. All of these things and positive traits are things that people attribute to liberal arts education. So what skills does a liberal arts education offer? Teaches you to solve problems creatively, teaches you to construct knowledge, and it teaches you to communicate effectively, and also maximize your resources as well as think critically. This is a very well-known saying: if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. A liberal arts education teaches you how to eat for a lifetime. So how does this relate back to business? When you think of business, what do you have to do with your day-to-day tasks? You're required to network with people. You're required to communicate with people. If you have a client, you have to find a way to connect with them on a personal basis. You have to communicate with your boss. You have to network in order to get a job. You're required to problem solve independently. Once you get your cubicle or your office, there's not a professor to tell you, hey, you need to study this. You don't have a study guide. You don't have an outline. You're required to think to yourself, this is the issue that I've been handed. How do I solve this problem? How do I go about enhancing this, giving back to my organization, and doing my job to the best of my abilities? You're also required to examine everything closely and formulate a creative solution. You have to look for loopholes. You have to look for ways to solve problems. And be creative about it, because if you're not creative, then, something that's already been done, you don't want to do that again. You want to, come up with different ways. Like Apple, they were innovative, they were creative. Communication. In the business world, like I said earlier, you're required to communicate with everyone. So let's look at how liberal arts teaches you to communicate. First, working in groups helps you to learn and work in diverse working environments. In core class, we're required to form groups. We're required to put presentations together. And it's not even necessarily in the classroom. Sometimes we might have to visit a museum together and analyze the pictures or whatever art we see. And then we're required to combine all of our backgrounds, combine the backgrounds of women, combine the backgrounds of different culture, combine the backgrounds of people that might be from Georgia or South Dakota. Wherever you're from, we learn to work in that environment where everyone's opinion comes together to formulate whatever is best to solve the solution. Having a broad knowledge base allows you to converse better and clearly get your point across. If you have a client, for example, and he's into, let's just say, Shakespeare, because everybody at Oglethorpe loves Shakespeare. So if they're into Shakespeare, and you didn't have a liberal arts education, you weren't required to read Shakespeare or go to a Shakespeare play or learn anything about him. You were just required to maybe take Calculus 2 and a bunch of super hard courses. You're not going to be able to connect to that client because his thought process is going to be on a whole nother level. But if you had a liberal arts education, first off, you know how to look up Shakespeare. You know what resources you need to find out what you need to talk about. So when you're talking to him and he brings up something like Hamlet, you can go, well, actually, I read Hamlet too. And there's your interest into the conversation. Then it also allows that person to feel more comfortable with whatever you're saying because they feel like you relate to them. It also teaches you problem-solving skills. Every day that you walk into the office, there's going to be a new problem or a new task that you need to address. Liberal arts teaches you to problem solve because you're required to investigate in coursework. When we get tests, there is no A, B, C, or D answer. You can't memorize the answer. You can't just look in your book and look at it and memorize it. What you have to do is you have to seek out the answer. Your professor wants to know, how do you feel about this? What is your opinion? How did you formulate your opinion? Did you go and research? Did you read something? Did you maybe survey people on campus? Did you interview people? You have to go out and seek your own answers. And this applies to the business world because no one is going to give you a textbook and ask you, is the answer B or C? You're going to have to explain to people how you came up with your answer, what investigative processes you use in order to come up with that. Researching information in liberal arts, you're taught that. If you, say, for example, had a science degree, you memorized all the formulas, even when you go back into that laboratory, you're still going to have to know how to research, regardless of whether you have a liberal arts degree or not. So we have the upper hand because that's not a skill that we learn after college. That's a skill that we learn during college. And liberal arts also encourages the students to come up with creative and alternative solutions. There's really never a wrong answer. Never a wrong answer. You might have a professor who teaches you one way, and if you go home, you investigate, and you research, and you come back to him, you present your idea, you might change his mind. This is a problem-solving chart. You identify the problem, you explore the information, you select the answer, you test the idea, and then you evaluate the results. This is how we're taught to problem-solve in the business world. Inventing creative solutions. In the business world, you're required to be innovative. You're required to think outside the box in order to get a better solution than the last one. Liberal arts teaches innovations because in liberal arts, you're not given the answers. You're tasked with inventing your very own answer. That's very important in the business world. So let's see what successful businessmen and women say about that. These are a couple of CEOs, well-known people who have liberal arts education. Of course, everybody knows Ted Turner, Kenneth Chenault. They're all CEOs. They own companies. They own services that you and I use daily, like Cartoon Network. Anybody watches that? Kenneth Chenault, American Express. Michael Eisner is from Disney. So Steve Jobs says, it is not technology married with the liberal arts, but it is married with the humanities, liberal arts, and all that yields the results that makes our hearts sing. Steve Jobs attributes his success to the liberal arts because he was able to think outside the box and create a product that no one had ever thought of. A few years ago, an iPod, people would have looked at him like he was crazy. That's a picture of him explaining that. And then the CEO of Disney, Michael Eisner, says, literature is unbelievably helpful because no matter what business you're in, you're dealing with interpersonal relationships. So he feels that liberal arts education teaches you about interpersonal relationships and connecting with people on a different level. And this is just a little bit about how my business degree has been enhanced by liberal arts education. I've been able to visit museums, research, do community service, meet people that I would not normally, meet. And this has all taught me to formulate ideas in a different manner and satisfy any situation. And then my last slide, as you can see, the people are now placing down the puzzle pieces. But this is my favorite quote from my paper. Liberal arts students are the most prepared for the business world because they are able to come up with unique ideas, because they were taught to be originative, because they have the innate ability to translate their thoughts and feelings into clear and concise directions, and because they are shown how to connect and interact with the world around them. Thank you.
Okay, wanted to thank you all again for coming. Let's give both of them a round of applause. Okay, so we decided on the winner beforehand because this was originally based on an essay competition, but they had great ideas and we wanted to give them both an opportunity and a venue to share the work that they did. So the winner of the $500 scholarship is Orion Ruffengreen. A round of applause. Next panel. Thank you everyone for coming.